Something that I just discovered. Oh my gosh. I just discovered that I've written 5 books, by the way, and they're all on Amazon. The first book, actually, I've written 6 books, but the other book isn't relevant to this group here of neurodivergent relationships. The first book I wrote was Going Over the Edge, Life with a Partner or Spouse with Asperger's Syndrome or ASD. That book, apparently, my publisher never told me they were going out of business. So that book is no longer available. If you go to Amazon, it'll cost you $100 or $200 to buy it because you have to buy it used. Not to worry, since I didn't know that the publisher was going to discontinue itself, the whole publishing company. The book, I'm going to republish it for you. And this time I'm going to have it on Kindle. Hopefully I can do an Audible as well. But I'll get it all set up. It's just going to take me a few weeks. So if those of you haven't gotten that first book, not to worry, it's going to be back. But I have to take care of that myself. I'm also talking to a couple of other publishers. In the meantime, though, the other 4 books are available. Okay, so do check those books out because that's a good place to start and just give yourself some background information. Oh, and Nancy says she can't hear me, but other people, I think they can. So Nancy, you might want to, I don't know what happened. Check your volume, check your on your device. It might be your device, I think. Other people can hear me, right? Because they're responding to my comments, so I think they can hear me. Hi, Rhonda. Let me know if you can't hear me, but I think it might just be Nancy's device. And if that doesn't work, try a different device. You know how this technology is. It's crazy making. So let's get started. And because we've got quite a few people here, I want to remind you this is a public forum. This is not one of my private support groups through Meetup, through the ACF, or even the course. Anybody can drop in and listen. And I kind of encourage that. I want people who are still, just sort of checking out autism spectrum disorder and how it applies to you in your life and your relationships. So this is a good place to come or to suggest to other people who want to know more. On the other hand, sometimes questions are posed that can be very personal. So, if you don't mind, go ahead and do that. If you're nervous about it, you don't have to pose the question here. You can go to look on the on the little box that I've described. You can send me a private message, and I'm happy to respond to that later. Not today, if it's too hard, or if you want to bring it up today, because you're going to find that there's a lot of people who can relate to your question. Steve, he says the volume is great here. So he must have a device that's working. Okay, so the topic is it's not you, learn to trust yourself. And this is there's a variety of events that I'm hosting this month that sort of relate to this subject of getting out of your negativity, clearing that negative space. The reason we get negative is we don't feel heard by our partners. Whether that's a neurodiverse or a neurotypical partner, a lot of times we get real anxious and annoyed with them because we want to be heard. And if we keep focusing on wanting to be heard, which I think is valid, I think we should pay attention to the fact that we're not being heard. Oh, there's Louise. Hi, Louise. Um, but at the same time, what's really important is for you to understand that you do know what you're talking about. You are perceptive. You're okay. Even if the other person doesn't get you, if you can stay in this okay place, it works better. Another part of this learning to trust yourself is that with people on the spectrum especially, is that sensitivity is not empathy. Hi, Nancy. Sensitivity is not empathy. And empathy is so much more than being sensitive. So we'll talk about why you're blamed for trying to help and how to break that cycle. It, it, learning to trust yourself means that I'm probably pretty good at figuring out what's going on here. but the situation may be kind of crazy. And so it makes you feel unstable, imbalanced. And as soon as you go there, you can't get anything accomplished. I'll come back and talk about this. Yeah, Louise says, and they contradict us. Exactly. When somebody tells you you're not making any sense, or that's not what I said, or I don't, that's not true, or whatever. Um, Remember, that could be an awkward way of letting you know that they don't get you, but that doesn't mean you're wrong, right? It's like one of my stories lately has been because of the time of year it is and where I live. I live at the edge of a national forest, and at this time of year in the northern hemisphere anyway, in the western hemisphere, um, I the bears are fattening up for going into hibernation. So there's bears in my neighborhood. And it's been very interesting that many of the people who live in my neighborhood are part timers. They're just here for weekends or vacations, and they think it's fun to see bear tracks. And I do too. I think it's fascinating. But when I tell them, be careful, bears are wild animals, they say, oh, but black bears are docile. I don't know how many people have told me that they think black bears are docile. And I go, well, compared to polar bears, maybe they're docile, but they're still bears and they can still hurt you. So I have to feel strong enough to say, I know they sort of look like teddy bears, but they're not, right? So in a relationship with someone on the spectrum, you have to be careful about, are they perceiving you accurately? They may be challenging your comments, but it doesn't mean you're wrong, and it doesn't mean they won't understand you. You just might have to get past their belief system. I mean, I can talk about that too. Okay, so this is the presentations that are happening. Here we go. These are the presentations that are happening this month, and they're all posted on the meetup calendar, the Advanced Community Forum calendar, and then there's one that's also posted on the course. So the first one to be offered is the video conference, Clearing Negative Thinking in Your ASD-NT Relationships. That's going to be November 7th and November 8th. I try to offer them twice and at different times. So one of them is usually like at 9 in the morning and the other one's at 4 in the afternoon. That's Pacific time. Those are based on my time zone. And this is a video conference. So I record uh, not all of them, but I record some of the video conferences. We record the teleconferences, and then these recordings are saved at the Advanced Community Forum for people who want to watch, excuse me, listen again. Okay, which is where you're also going to find my book. I'm going to record it there too, so that you can sign up and just listen to Going Over the Edge. It's about time that that one got available in Audible, except you're going to have to listen to me talk about it. Anyway, clearing negative thinking in your ASD-NT relationships. How many of you feel like you've turned into this angry, anxious person as a result of this relationship, right? I'm sure you're all raising your hand. Yeah. And this isn't really who you are, is it? You're not angry people. You're kind, empathic, uh, working, caring. You wouldn't be even on this video today, this Dr. Kathy's office hours, if you weren't people that wanted to find solutions for your family. But how many have you gotten yourself into a situation where you're just angry and upset and reactionary? This is normal. I want you to get that. So one way to clear that negative thinking is to remind yourself that reacting in this negative way actually is what people do when they're trying to survive a tough situation, right? So once again, that brings us back to this main point, which is that it might not be you, but it might be the tough situation that's bringing out the worst in you. Oh, Melena says, I'm past the anger, but I feel like his mother. Okay, right. See, we come up with other options for coping. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just in charge all the time. I have to take care, I have to, take care of things. I have to anticipate when the mistakes that the other person's going to make. So, one way to clear negative thinking is to remember that you are trying to cope with a very tough relationship, which, by the way, is chapter one of Going Over the Edge. It's about very tough relationships, and we never gave ourselves credit for that. Luis says, I feel like I don't have much of a brain because he restates most of what I say or contradicts it, says I'm wrong. Yeah, this is their clumsiness, Luis. This is sadly, the clumsy behavior that we see with people on the spectrum who go black and white on us and say, that's wrong, you didn't say that, I didn't mean that. And they don't focus on connecting to the loving person who's there. They're just going to take issue with your words. Okay, the next video conference is Sensitivity is Not Empathy. That one is November 14th and 15th. Again, 2 different times so we can get as many time zones as possible. And one of those will also be recorded. So if you can't even fit in, you can go join the Advanced Community Forum and listen to this conference. Sensitivity is not empathy. I don't know how many times I have heard people talk about the fact that how come if my autistic loved one or child or sister or whoever it is, how come if that person is so sensitive that they cry at the drop of a hat or they're very concerned about the welfare of the dog, that they don't get me? And remember, just because you're sensitive doesn't mean you channel that sensitivity in such a way that you can be empathic. Empathy is the ability to read where the other person is coming from, understand that human being you're dealing with, at the same time that you're aware of what's going on with you, at the same time that you're looking for a method of communicating between those two worlds so that both people feel heard and respected, right? That's what that's about. Just because someone's sensitive and reacts strongly to seeing something that bothers them doesn't mean that's empathy. Empathy actually isn't about, um, you know, being aware of your feelings. It's about being aware of the whole big context of what's going on here and knowing which pieces we're going to grab and talk about and which pieces will sit over there behind us for a while and grab them later when it seems like the right time. And think about how you are able to do that. That's a pretty powerful thing to be able to do. So sensitivity is not empathy. The third video conference for the month is on November 21st and 22nd. Why are you blamed for trying to help? And I think that's a really good topic that has to do with it might be the situation, not you. Trust yourself. You might be being blamed because it feels like blame when your neurodiverse loved one keeps asking irrelevant questions. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And those are transactional questions that aren't probably going to be very helpful, right? Or when you're the one asking the questions, a lot of times the other person feels like you're picking on them too. You're criticizing them, whether you're neurotypical or neurodiverse. The reason is questions when someone is anxious make us feel like we're on the hot spot. It's really okay to take a break, stop asking questions, don't answer the questions. You can say, you know what, I'm not sure this is going to help. Can I think about it and let's talk later? We can talk more about solutions to these kind of things too, but this topic, why are you blamed for trying to help, is that it's not always easy to understand good intentions. If the behavior looks as if you're being disrespectful or the other person is being disrespectful of you, if we feel that way, it's kind of hard to go to the next topic. Okay, I'm trying to look and see if I've missed anybody here. Go ahead and put your comments in the comment section or your questions if you have for me, and I'll go back answer them. The reason I keep looking over there is to see if there's anything I'm missing. After those 3 video conferences, or actually one week before, is the teleconference. The video conferences are small groups, like 8 people, so that you can chat with each other and learn from each other and be supportive. And it's not always, I'm leading the meeting, but it really is open to having the discussion by the participants. The teleconference, the topic is the situations are crazy, not you. So this is the same. But the teleconference is I'll make a short presentation, then I open it up for question and answer one at a time. And again, the teleconference is recorded and stored at the Advanced Community Forum, which you do have to join. And there's a link in the little box up there that shows you how to join it. One of the problems that we have, whether you're neurotypical or neurodiverse, is explaining to other people who don't live in a neurodivergent world, trying to explain to them what the problems are. It's really hard to explain it to somebody who doesn't live this life. So we end up sort of not talking about it or feeling oppressed by the situation. And in our groups, everybody knows that it's not you. The situation is crazy making when you have a transactional neurodiverse person trying to understand the empathic interactional world of neurotypicals and vice versa. We just keep crossing over and not really getting it. So Louise, she says, I started a new journal, self-love, and after just 3 days, I think I might feel better about myself. Right. And she says switch research is site for therapeutic journals. So she's giving you a source there if you want to look at the post. Yeah, it really is about taking your life back, being true to yourself, knowing that you're really an exceptional person, very kind, very creative. Otherwise, you wouldn't be trying to understand all this stuff better. Then the course that I offer, Asperger's Syndrome and Relationships, is a video course. It's about 6-7 hours of video in which I'm explaining the dynamics of neurodivergent relationships. And there's quizzes to take. Uh, you can make comments, and you can go into a special forum for people who are taking the course so that you can talk to each other in the forum, the online forum. And then I also offer a webinar for participants in the course. Then I record those webinars, and those are saved at the course. So right now we have about a year's worth of webinars in addition to the course that you can listen to our discussions. And those are audio recordings. None of it is video recording. The course is video because it's just me. But the actual webinars are audio recordings that you can listen to and learn, answer your questions, and listen to how other people are answering some of these questions. So this one I think is a great topic. It's what about how I feel? What about how I feel? I know that I hear this a lot from my neurotypicals, that it's like, if I get upset about something, if I'm just worn out because I just don't want to be pummeled anymore with questions that aren't going to be helpful, those transactional questions that neurodiverse folks seem to ask. If I'm just tired, if I don't know about you, but when I was raising my children, my autistic daughter would sometimes make me so crazy that I still remember just sitting down at the top of the stairs. Her bedroom was downstairs. Sit at the top of the stairs, just sit there and just go. I couldn't take it anymore. I just kind of put my head in my hands. Sometimes I'd cry. Sometimes I was yelling because I was just tuckered out. And so, the idea is what about how I feel is not just about that you get tuckered out, that these are tough relationships. It really is, why can't I just do that? Why can't mom just cry? Why can't dad just blow a fuse because he's worn out? we feel like we often are not allowed to be, exhausted. And I think these are very tough relationships. I think that this is a group of people that just get sick. In fact, I was talking to another one of my clients this morning who is finally finding some medical help for some severe neck and back problems that she has. And it really is a function of having lived her entire life dealing with the pressures of a neurodivergent childhood and then marriage and then raising children on the spectrum. It's tiring. So, anyway, what about how I feel is important, I think. And then some other options for you are uh, Julie is our ambassador, and anybody who's a member of the meetup group is able to attend Julie's new member orientation Zoom call. She does that once a month. This time it's on November 16th. And um, what Julie did, Julie's been in the group for many, many years, and she does a great job of not just talking about this life, but helping you figure out all the resources, because there are a lot of resources, right? Sadly, I guess maybe that's sad, but there's 3 groups you can be a part of, right? I just launched a podcast that you can listen to. There's the blogs, there's books, there's the forums that, how do I enter the forum? How do I find a recording to listen to again? Julie will help with that. And Steve's got something. Let me just do this one more thing here. Oh, so November is actually Donna wanted me to remind you that you can send me your questions for the November um, Dr. Kathy's office hours, and that theme is finding your way to normal. So there's a link again in the body of this event today that tells you how to send me a question or a comment. And if you could put it if you could send it to me under that topic of finding your way to normal, that'd be great. But if you have some other question, it's really okay too. And I do have a question that somebody posed, which I will get to in just a minute, but let's get back to what Steve is saying. He says, trying to explain to NTs what it's like living with an ASD spouse is similar to explaining to normies what it was like inside my former religious cult. Oh my gosh. Yes. Um, you know why that's true, Steve? What's interesting about this is that I often say um, we can feel, especially neurotypicals, can feel like you've been brainwashed if you live in these neurodivergent relationships long enough. You keep adapting to the way transactional people think because it's so powerful. And the transactional person isn't really asking, do you agree or do you want this? Or is this right for you? They're not asking themselves that, they're just making their point. So, trying to explain the kind of brainwashing I think that Steve's talking about, that's not easy to do because it's so dang subtle. But I really like this notion, Steve, of saying, well, it's sort of like what it was like being in this farmer cult. You can try that one. Uh, Louise says, this morning at a meeting, a member thanked me for what I said and said it was helpful. Inside, I was shocked because I often think I don't make any sense. It's that my partner gives no feedback on what I've said. However, when I told him how shocked I was to hear her words, he then complimented me on what I had said, that it was helpful. Isn't that fascinating? So, what Louise is saying is really important. We doubt ourselves, except you're pretty wise people. You've been through a lot. These are complicated relationships. In order to do as well as all of you are doing, you understand more than the average person. So when somebody else thanks you for your comments or your understanding, take it in. You probably deserve it. Then the second part of this is fascinating. She explained this compliment to her ASD spouse, and he understood, right? Because it's not, they don't have empathy. People on the spectrum are EMD zero, but that doesn't mean they can't put the pieces together if they make notes, if they think about it, if they talk to their therapist about it. A lot of times they can go back and go, oh, this is what my neurotypical meant, right? This is what my neurotypical meant. And then they can comment on it. What they miss and what you miss is being understood at this moment in time. That's what was so powerful for Louise to have somebody thank her right now. She said something, and right away the person responded. So for neurotypicals, that's what love is, by the way. Love is this flow that's happening right now, right here in this moment, right? It's not just something that you hold inside of you, although we have it there too, but it just feels so good. It feels like a little bit of love just got sent in your direction. I'm not sure what you mean, Linda, by I feel like that too, but are you referring to Louise's comment or Steve's or even just what I've been saying? I don't know. Make sure you know uh, who you're posting for, but if you just want to say I feel like that too, that's okay too. While you're thinking about that, I want to read a question that got posted recently in one of our groups. Um, this one person wrote, your most recent YouTube video was most helpful to me in my marriage. Thank you. Uh, and by the way, what's on YouTube are these Dr. Kathy's office hours and then some other things that I've recorded to help you. And that's all free. You can go there and listen. The podcast is free. And you can find the podcast by Googling me or clicking on the link in the at my website because they're all recorded there. Anyway, you talked about the need for Aspies to get therapy help with understanding good intentions that good intentions are not the same as good behavior, and how for them apologizing means they are admitting to bad or negative intentions. What's the reason for this misunderstanding of intentions versus behavior for someone on the spectrum? Where does it come from? And she goes on to say, I've finally realized at 27 years of marriage how very central this problem is to our conflicts. I've been trying to solve the problems that are caused. He's been avoiding them through self-justifying behavior and so forth. Let's get back to this intentions versus behavior. And I'm sure you can all relate to this one, right? So my mother used to love to quote whoever originally said this one, but she said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And my mother, I'm convinced, was on the autism spectrum, and she understood this. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So for people on the spectrum, a lot of times they have a hard time apologizing for harming us or hurting our feelings because they didn't mean to. They think of intention as a mitigating circumstance, which it is. It's just that even if it is mitigating, if you've harmed somebody, you need to repair the damage, right? So for neurotypicals, intention is part of it. But if I've harmed somebody, even though I didn't mean to, then I need to do what I can to make it better. I need to restore the connection. And the problem for neurodiverse people is that they need a lot of reminders that their intention may have been good, but I still want the behavior corrected. The problem with that is that goes back to, I forget who said this, that I'm like a mom. One of was that Melina? Yeah, I feel like his mother. The problem is if we have to keep demanding that there be correction for the misbehavior, it feels like you're scolding a child as opposed to, can we work this out? Right? So one of the problems is that people on the spectrum want credit for having meant well, which we're willing to do, but where they have to, they can't solve it that way. They have to go to, how can I make this up to you? How can I fix this? How can I restore our connection, right? Empathy is the ability to keep the connection going, keep the love flowing, right? That's what empathy is. And if they don't do that, then we're stuck with, yes, I know you didn't mean to harm me, and you're a good person, and I appreciate that you're trying, but it feels one-sided, doesn't it? So she wants to know, what's the reason for this misunderstanding of intention versus behavior? Where does it come from? It comes from solving problems in a transactional way. It's solving problems not with the other person, but making my point. My point is, I'm a good person and I didn't mean to cause harm, so can't we just let this go? Okay, I'm sorry, but can't we just let it go? See, that's proving a point, or that's admitting fault, but it's not reconnecting the people. And so I'm biased. I think the most important part is keeping the connection strong and healthy and loving, and worrying later about getting to the bottom of everything. So Nancy says, so important. My husband has said awful things to me. I'm not even sure he's aware because he's overcome by rage. He simply will not hear that I need and deserve to know he didn't mean it. Instead, he immediately gets defensive. Right, because he automatically goes to, I was angry. That's why I said those things. It's like, well, yeah, I know you're angry, but it's still not okay, right? Still not okay. How do you take back? How do people on the spectrum learn to regulate those rages? That's the point. That they can learn to do better. They can learn to manage their behavior better. It's just hard for them because of that sensitivity, actually, because they just get filled with it. Then their brain goes into overdrive in terms of, because I'm a good person, I didn't mean to, and she's just so sensitive and overreacts to everything, blah blah blah. I'm just going to double down and prove that I'm okay. It's an impossible situation that requires therapy, by the way, Nancy. Couples need to have a good therapist who can walk them through, how do you solve this? It's not about who's right and who's wrong, right? And speaking of the rage, I have people on the spectrum who refuse to talk about certain subjects. Maybe you've got partners like this too, who don't want to talk about certain things because they're afraid that they will rage and they don't want to. So they just avoid the subject. I suppose that's better than having the rage, but then we don't often get to what it is that is, upsetting people. Anger is an interesting problem. If it's mixed with all that anxiety that you usually see with people on the spectrum, no wonder they can't really manage it any better. But I don't want you to put up with abuse either. So if your partner is getting angry with you or being disrespectful, calling you names and things like that, it's really important, neurotypical or neurodiverse. You just say, well, I think we're done now. I'm going to go for a walk. I'll check back with you this afternoon. Or let's talk again after dinner. I'm not going to do this anymore. It's really important not to engage in abuse, either as a victim of abuse or deliver abuse, right? How does that help anybody? And I appreciate what Nancy's saying, because she says he says he didn't mean to do it. Instead, he immediately gets defensive. It's like, that's low self-esteem showing right there, right? He's defensive because he disappointed you. He's aware he disappointed you, and he doesn't know what to do about it, so he doubles down. Sad. It can be kind of messy, can it? So the last part of this person's question is, what keeps them trapped in this way of behaving? Anxiety, lack of awareness. They need a good therapist to help them walk through why I'm so defensive. Just not just why, but how to manage the emotional uproar before it gets way out of control. So I'm usually asking my neurodiverse people, are you aware that you're starting to get past a level 2 on the 1 to 5 scale? You know, 5 being totally outraged and 1 being calm. If you're on a level 2, that's okay, but you don't want to go to a level 3. Are you aware that you're starting to move up to a level 3? And that would be when you would say, may I take a break? You know, sometimes they don't even know they're upset until they blow. And then, of course, you know they're upset, right? Then the mistake that neurotypicals make with this stuff is thinking that all we have to do is talk it through, which I like to believe that too. It's what I do for a living. But you can't always just talk it through. We have to have people calm down first, be willing to deal with an unpleasant subject, you know. And as soon as the anxiety starts to go up again, that's when you say, let's take a break. You might have to take 2 or 3 breaks before you can get things resolved. So, you know, what keeps them trapped in this way of behaving? Incredible anxiety that just takes off, and when your pulse is over 100, you can't think straight. So anybody else got some questions that they want to take up? Because I've kind of gone through my topic today. Go ahead and post it in the comments section. I'm happy to answer your questions on this. I hope you were getting the idea that if you accept that these are very tough relationships, that we've got a transactional empathy triad blind person dealing with an interactional empathy triad sensitive person, that uh, you're going to have a lot of misunderstandings, not so much about the topic, but the way people bring it up. Oh, so Debbie asked, how many NTs here have a partner who's very quiet, hardly talking at all? It feels like pulling teeth to find out how they're feeling. Right. This is very, very common. That's an adaptation. It also might be your partner's personality, but that not saying things, not talking about how you feel, um, that's number one, he may not know how he feels. Number two, he may not know how to deal with your reaction to how he feels, because that would require empathy. So, kind of being quiet or smiling all the time, being ever so pleasant and nice, those are masking behaviors that many people on the spectrum have developed in order to get by, in order to be okay. So Michelle says, how do I get my spouse to understand the uh, ways he upsets me? I think when he can't comprehend how he's upsetting me, I just keep it all to myself to avoid his angry reaction. Well, this is normal, isn't it? Why would you want to have more anger? So you keep it to yourself. The problem is, of course, that you're swallowing you. You're not allowing yourself to talk about how I feel. Um, so it is not easy to deal with uh, helping the other person understand that what they're doing upsets you. If you start, okay, so this is a tip for neurotypicals. If you want your partner to understand how their neurodiverse behavior upsets you, if you start with how you feel, they automatically get defensive, because, of course, their intention is not to hurt you. So it's easier if you start with how they feel. I hear you, that something's on your mind that's really important to you, and for them to talk about it. Um, But I don't want you stuffing how you're feeling either. And you can say, I know it's kind of hard to hear this, but even though you mean well, when you tell me X, Y, and Z, it does hurt my feelings. And maybe I should let it go. But I would like to ask you if you could, do it differently. Be kinder to me. It's not easy though. Usually the therapist has to help with that. So a lot of times I'm saying to neurodiverse folks, could you just do this for your spouse because it makes him or her feel better? It's a gift to try to manage that behavior that they find difficult. But on a regular basis, doesn't it make sense that a transactional person without empathy doesn't know why the way they talk to you can make you feel upset? Because they're just telling you what's going on. They're not considering how to do it. How to do it would be empathy. How do you present something in such a way that the other person feels respected, heard, wants to participate with you? How do you present that? It's not so easy. Ruth. Hi, Ruth. My partner has taken to wearing earphones all the time. She says constantly listening keeps her on an even keel, but now she is basically absent all of the time. Yeah. Earphones really are sort of the friend for people that are neurodiverse, uh, because kids benefit by that too, because it keeps out the ambient sound that's so distracting. What you might do is ask her if you could just talk about one thing, because the problems for neurotypicals is once our partners are willing to talk with us, we just want to jump in and work on this and work on this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and we kind of flood them with stuff. Um, so uh, how many of you, by the way, think about this? How many of you have partners who put on headphones, they're sitting in front of the computer, and they have the TV going? So it's kind of interesting. They're not, it just is, they would rather be flooded by that sound than you, because you are more complicated than listening to music or even watching the news. You're more complicated. So what neurotypicals have to do is do one thing at a time rather than have the kind of conversations that we feel comfortable with. So if your partner, Ruth, is willing to hear this, that you don't feel loved because she's doing other things, maybe she'd be open to having a conversation about one thing. And then we stop. We don't do any more until she feels like she can handle that. And then maybe you have something else and you find a nice, quiet place to do that. But what Ruth's bringing up is really important. Before we run out of time here, I want to make sure if anybody else wants to put something in the comments section, please do that. What she's bringing up is really important. Love seems to disappear in these relationships because of the communication snafus, right? Because of the mix-ups. Both partners can feel unloved because they don't feel understood or they don't feel connected. So we can get to the bottom of this by understanding the very different worlds that people come from. It's like me with my bear example. If a number of my neighbors are mostly city people who come down for the weekends to their beach home, because I live at the Oregon coast, they may not know. Most of them don't see bears wandering through the city. They don't know that there's another way to think about the environment here. So you might talk to them about that. You might say, okay, we've got to look at these very different ways that we communicate. That's what my course is about. That's what my books are about. How to understand the neurodiverse way of thinking and the neurotypical way of thinking, and how they don't really connect very well. So we have to practice what I call the 7-step interface protocol so that we can talk to each other, but not all the time. Not every conversation. It takes a lot of planning. Okay. Anybody else have another comment before we go? I hope you scroll back up to the top, click on some of those links. If you haven't joined the meetup group, please do that. If you go into the advanced community forum, which I also recommend, then you can listen to the last 10, 12 years of recordings. And because we have quite a library of recordings. And then you can also chat with each other, bring up questions there. And by the way, I go in and answer questions. If somebody leaves them in a forum or on Meetup or on the course, there's a place on the course to click the discussion button, and I will answer your questions, or I'll, if I don't have an answer, at least we'll keep the discussion going until somebody comes along who does have an answer. And Jen, okay, she says, how do we deal with the limiting of what we NT want to do because the ND person doesn't want to do it? So that's a big question, and it's an important one. So I don't mind kind of veering off and dealing with that, Jen. It's not that they don't want to do it. The neurodiverse person, generally, we were just talking about that this morning. The neurodiverse person will say no before they say yes to anything they haven't thought of. They say no. And the reason they say no is the minute you suggest something, their anxiety goes up. Okay, that's one reason for saying no. Another reason for saying no is that it is hard for us, all of us as human beings, to do anything we're not terribly motivated to do. And if you don't have empathy, you're not motivated to get into the other person's reality and share that activity with someone you love because it would make them happy. That would be motivation. So they lack that motivation in the moment. That doesn't mean they can't go there. So what I usually say is, could you think about it? I know it's not something you're thinking you would like to do right now, but can we talk again about it tomorrow morning? And then you might, and if they're still not sure tomorrow morning and they say, well, I told you I wasn't interested, but you go ahead and go. You go and have a good time if you want to. You'd say, well, I'd have more fun if you could go. I want you to think about it. Then you're bringing it up again a couple of days later until they've heard it enough that it's not new and they've gotten past their anxiety about you making a suggestion. That sometimes works. But there's those two parts to it. First, it's new, and they don't transition to something new unless they've thought of it. And they're not motivated to do something that they don't think about. But they can muster up the motivation as they think about the fact that they love you and you've asked for this. And sometimes with kids, you know how it is with kids, you might say, I'd like you to try it. Can you eat one bite of this? You might like it. If you don't, at least you made your mom happy. And you can say things like that. Well, I really like this movie. I, like, huh, my latest favorite movie is Barbie. And it's such a feminist movie, and I just love it. It's so adorable. But I know that there are a lot of people who've watched it and just don't get it. And that's okay. But I keep saying, well, maybe if you watch it a third time, you'll see what the director and the writers had in mind. So Steve says, often they refuse because what I want us to do places them in an anxiety producing environment. Yes, uh, I have, you're absolutely right, Steve. Sometimes what makes them so anxious is that you want to go out dancing and it's too noisy, too many people, right? Or you want to try this new restaurant that everybody's been talking about, but new food they're not sure about. Maybe the way you introduce them to the new restaurant is you pick up something from the restaurant and bring it home first and let them try it. But it's often that the environment is anxiety producing. And honestly, if you think you're an anxious person, you need to know that their anxiety is 10 times greater than yours. It's really pretty amazing. So if you're watching this video on YouTube or on Facebook later, you can still post comments, all right, to each other. If you want to leave a comment on this page, I try to go in later and answer a few of them, after we're done recording. Oops, there's one more. Sorry. I wonder if with aging AS should consider meds or L-theanine, an amino acid I use for anxiety that works well, or something else. Yes, there are medicines that help with anxiety. The problem is the level of anxiety that's required to be managed for most people on the spectrum is so intense that they have to take, antipsychotic medications, or what's the word I'm looking for? Medicines that help with seizures. And that's so extreme that it really is not good for people. But there are some nice, you're right about this, Louise. There are some um, lower level calming, more nutraceutical sort of things that might help. You can certainly give that a try. Yes. Is it Bayosh? Bayosh? Does this reluctancy stay stable over time, or does it get worse and they get more anxious, reclusive over time? So the thing is, it's true for all of us people. If we don't get help for something, if we just hunker down and try to like avoid things, I think it gets worse. It just gets worse unless you face it and you move through it, and that requires therapy. Oh, I'm out of time. I wish I could answer your question, Nancy. I got to get going. I will post a notice on this one. Okay, take care, everybody. I gotta go. But remember, you can join the groups. You can click on those links and read more. You can watch the YouTubes. I want you to keep yourself supported, if nothing else, at least virtually. Alrighty, take care.